I'd like to welcome you all to this open house session. First, I'll just say, I'd like to introduce ourselves. My name is Tim Hogan. I'm a principal planner with HTFC Planning Design in Winnipeg. And this is?
My name is Adam Craker. I'm also I'm an associate and planner at HTFC Planning Design as well. So nice to be back in Thompson again, and great to see you all here tonight. Before we begin, we want to just acknowledge that we are here in Treaty 5 territory. This is the home of the traditional territory of the City Cree Nation, as well as other Treaty 5 First Nations, and the Manitoba Métis, or Red River Métis as well. So once again, we're talking a lot about land here tonight, and recognize the importance of the land that we are on, and really want to recognize that as we go about our development plan and zoning process for this project.
Okay, I thought I would just give you a little bit of an idea of what to expect this evening. What we have planned is a brief presentation. We're going to introduce the project that we're working on and the process, and a bit of the timeline about what we're doing here in this project. And following that presentation, then we'll introduce you to the sort of the meat of the evening, which is an open house where we're gathering information from you at this early stage of this project. Yeah, I was trying to get to here. Where is it? You can look for that. We'll just sort of introduce a bit of the background of this project. The Thompson Planning District includes the City of Thompson and the LGD of Mystery Lake. Now, over the years, this area has experienced various development pressures and has undergone some major changes. There also have been changes to legislation and general land use changes in the neighborhood and in the region. We have the Planning District's development plan and zoning bylaws that are currently in place are getting older. We have a couple of the documents that are the most recent ones were prepared in 2013. So those are now 12 years old. Usually you want to revise these things around 10 years of age. Things start to change, and you want to bring them up to date. We also find that we have a zoning bylaw for Mystery Lake, which was actually created in the 80s. So that's time to update that as well. So these will be brought up to talk about and engage and allow for changes to, as I mentioned, sort of current conditions in land use, current legislation, and also best planning practices. So that'll all be brought into this process. The new development plan and zoning bylaws will help to map out the community's long-term plans to guide future growth and to avoid unnecessary land use conflicts. They'll also provide updated policies to guide the development of existing and new areas, different housing types. And we have some examples like tiny homes, secondary suites, new commercial development opportunities, and also increased public safety. They will also ensure that the area will continue to grow as a regional service center and regional hub in northern Manitoba, with the shared goal of encouraging development that's in the best interests of the city, of the LGD, of First Nations and Métis neighbors, and also the local residents, businesses, industries, etc. These new bylaws will also simplify the language used in those bylaws. It will simplify the zones that are used. We'll touch on what I mean by that in a little bit. And this will make them easier to use and easier to understand, both by the staff, city staff that are using these documents, council who are making decisions based on them, and also for the residents, so that the rules that are being operated under are easier to understand when you look at them.
And so what we're going to be talking here today about, as Tim mentioned, are two key things that we're working to update. So the first is a development plan bylaw. And so if you look here at the top of this, I don't know, ask for a raise of hands here who has heard of a development plan before, but these are often things that are in place. They're important planning documents that not a lot of people know about all the time. So the development plans are really at the top of this pyramid of documents that you see here. They're approved both by the local planning district board, so there's a Thompson Planning District, and they also have to be approved by the province. And so that's important to keep in mind. And so I'll explain a bit more about what is a development plan. A development plan is a document that sets out a community's vision for the future. That vision is captured in goals and policy statements that address physical, social, environmental, and economic objectives. It describes using words and maps how and where the community wants land to be developed. It also describes how the plan will be implemented. And so the key things here is that anytime anybody wants to do a subdivision in the city, if people want to change the use of land in a significant way, it all has to line up with the policies in the development plan. So it becomes a really important document if you're looking to do anything on your land. Going down here a little bit, we'll jump over secondary plan bylaws. We'll talk about zoning bylaws right now. And so these, more people know about what zoning bylaws are. They're a little more familiar. But essentially, zoning bylaws are tools that help to implement the objectives and policies in the development plan we just talked about. And they do this by setting out specific rules for development and land use in a community. Zoning is a tool used by municipalities to regulate the use and development of land and buildings. So it primarily works by dividing land into distinct areas called zones. And within each zone, it has its own list of the types of development and land uses that may be allowed within its boundaries. So here's a map that shows what is happening, what the development plan policy areas and the zoning bylaw zones currently are right now in the city of Thompson. So you can see the development plan shows the difference. The development plan has essentially, there's 6 or so different policy areas of the development plan. Most notably, the red area there is established, or it's the core commercial areas are labeled on that map there. A lot of the residential neighborhoods are under this established neighborhoods policy area. These industrial areas are the industrial policy. And the blue is institutional policy area. So these are, very general things, but it does have to follow that everything within this block has a set of policies and goals that they want to follow, shape the future of the community. If you look at the zoning bylaws, you'll see, most notably, there's a whole bunch of different little acronyms and abbreviations for the zone. So there's a whole bunch of different zones. I forget how many offhand. There's probably 15 different zones in the current zoning bylaw for the city of Thompson. And so we won't get into those all here, but you can kind of see how it breaks down. And there's, once again, for if you look at the commercial area, there's 3 or so different commercial zones in the downtown currently. There's a mixed use zone, there's a DT1 and a DT2. And so we're going to look at all of these things and see if there's other ways to simplify zones where they should be simplified, or are there other things we should be doing. So we're going to be looking at that in our work ahead. So just to take back a step, we want to look at, we're looking in our work at the whole Thompson Planning District. So where is the Thompson Planning District? Well, see, it does encompass the city of Thompson, middle there, in the back, and then everything within that red box is what's known as the local government district, or LG district lake. And so the development plan covers all of this. And so what we've done is we've started in our work to inform our update of these documents. We've already started to look at a number of things that will inform our work here. So we're looking at things like land use and capability, the historical context, population and demographics, the housing situation, the economic context, municipal servicing and infrastructure, environmental conditions and changes. All of these things are informing us. So I'll pass it over to Tim to talk a little bit more about some things that we've been working on so far.
Thanks, Adam. So included in some of the work that we've been doing so far, and what I didn't mention is we're at the very beginning of this process. So we have started collecting background information, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And then this is the first open house where we're gathering information from residents. So we're very early in the stage, but we have some preliminary information of our background gatherings that we can talk about. We have information regarding the transportation networks and systems that are in place, connections to other parts of the province and elsewhere through road, rail, air, etc. There are, of course, a few, you'll know about aggregate pits that are around, that are aggregate resources that are helpful to know about when we're planning for the future. So those resources, as well as the active pits, information is available through the provincial government and added to our mapping. As you're well aware, mining and minerals play a massive role in this region, and that's how this region came about. So there are numerous claims and active permits throughout the area. So that's another piece of information for this process. As you can see here, the LGD, the local government district, is in red, and the vast majority of these mining claims and leases lie along this stretch, and that in fact is the origin of the LGD. That's why we're here surrounded by unorganized territory rather than other LGDs or municipalities. As we work on this project, one of the things that's helpful to know about is what's happening with the climate. It affects infrastructure, affects planning, and affects what we're looking to do and what you're looking to do with your community as we move forward. The Canada Climate Atlas provides a good source of information that is specific to the location. So we've gathered that information. I'll just touch on a little bit of the information that's available through the Climate Atlas. If you're looking at expected spring and fall, and Adam, you figured out how to make this move.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, we find that we can expect that annual precipitation is likely to increase as the climate changes in the near future. That's between now and up to about 2050. Spring precipitation likely will increase by an average of like 10 millimeters. While in the far future, up to 2080, it'll likely increase by 20 millimeters from current. Sorry, I'm just unfamiliar machine here. No, slide down. But anyway, high predictions show that spring's precipitation will likely double from the current. And that's an increase of 82 millimeters. So it's a very high amount. This increased precipitation will make spring runoff issues and extreme events more common, more likely, and those will put extreme taxes on your infrastructure. So those are the kind of things that we're looking at. These really extreme events are going to increase and have a lot more water to deal with. In spring and fall, we can expect to see extended severe storms and wildfire seasons as well. We'll see shifting in the seasons themselves. It's going to feel a little bit different all the time. And we'll see jet stream changes as well. Average summer temperatures are expected to increase by 2 to 4 degrees in the near and in the far future. The number of very hot days, those are days 30 degrees and over, will likely increase from 3 to 10 days a year in the near future and up to 23 days in the far future. So 20 more days of 30 degrees plus. And that's the far future, that's up to about 2080. So it's looking fairly far, but it'll be a gradual change between now and then. So again, taxes on the infrastructure and the servicing. We're going to want to make sure that you have the power to run air conditioning. There's water systems are all able to function in the extreme heat. We can expect a higher potential for drought as well, and heavier rainfall events, more frequent and intense heat, as I mentioned, and with that comes more frequent and intense wildfires, and also new infectious diseases. Expected changes in the winter include a general increase in winter temperatures, fewer cold days per year, and fewer of those very cold days, which of course are relied upon for ice and for travel, as well as for recreation. We can expect more and heavier wet snowfalls, not that nice dry, deep cold that we're so used to. Increased freezing rain and rain on snow events, so more winter thaw events, shorter winter seasons overall, and an increase in overwintering pests as well as pathogens. Another thing that we looked at, should I keep going or do you want to talk about?
Yeah, why don't you keep going?
Okay. We also looked at population change. We're in the middle of looking at this information. So these are the initial findings. Gathered, what we're trying to do through this process is look at the history of population change, the current population, so we can see what's currently needed with the existing services, and then project a future population so that we can look to what changes are needed in the future for the community to service that population. So to date, we have accessed and analyzed population data from Health Canada and Statistics Canada to get an initial idea about the number of residents and the changes to the population. So over the 35-year period, 1986 to 2021, Stats Canada data shows an apparent overall decline in population with a significant increase in the Indigenous proportion. However, we have good reasons to believe that these numbers don't account for the entire total population in the community. There is historically sort of a poor reckoning of the exact population in the neighborhood or in the region compared to the Statistics Canada data. So we're taking that into account as well. This chart here compares Thompson's age makeup with the age makeup of all of Manitoba. The proportion of population is shown from youngest on the bottom of the chart to oldest at the top. Shows females on the left, males on the right. Thompson is shown in blue and gray. And as you can see, if you're looking at the blue and the gray, Thompson has a much younger proportion of population than Manitoba as a whole. And then also a relatively smaller, older population. So this also is important for planning, thinking about what services are currently available and what services are going to be needed in the future. And of course, for what we're looking at is the land that's needed for those things. While official statistics are not showing an increasing population, there's also reason to believe that the population will remain steady or increase as Thompson continues to build as a regional hub. So to properly plan, a variety of population projections will be undertaken. And so these are some initial ideas of some, in each case, relatively modest growth looking into the future over the planning period. And a few different scenarios are used, ranging from a low to a medium to a high. As I mentioned, all these are relatively moderate. While they look quite steep on the graph only shows between 14,000, 19,000 as opposed to the whole graph. And on the next slide, you can see from the population projections, we get an idea of what the population increase might be from the different scenarios. They range from about, let's looking into the 25-year future. They range at the low growth from about 2,000 additional people in the community to somewhere around 4,000. We then will take these numbers, and again, these are preliminary, but we'll take the numbers and we will apply some analysis to it to determine approximately how many housing units are needed to house those additional people. And then from that, we'll consider, well, what kind of housing units might be needed. So are they multifamily? Are they townhouse? Are they single family dwellings? Each of those has a different land requirement. And then we can estimate some land requirements over that 25-year period to try to get a feeling for how much land do we need in the community for new housing as we look over the planning period. And so, again, these preliminary numbers identify a bit of a range, ranging from about 3 to 7 acres per year might be needed based on these preliminary projections. I'll now turn it over to Adam.
All right, so today's open house, as we mentioned, the purpose of the open house is we are visioning. We are gathering feedback information from you to incorporate into the planning process and to guide the development plan and zoning bylaws. So around the room, you'll see a number of these stations that we have right here. And so we encourage you to start once we're wrapped up here. I start over there. You can read more now. We've already gone over what the background is and where the district is. On that there, you can see how can I stay involved. It gives a bit of a timeline of our whole process here. And so, like we say, there's a star of where we are now. We're just starting our work here. It's going to take us the next, through the next year as we develop these development plan and zoning bylaw. We're going to be back for more sessions like this, both in the late spring and in the fall. And that's our initial timelines right now. And so we'll move things along in that fashion. The next display board over there has kind of the first interactive thing where we want to hear from you. And now we're talking here about what are the most important changes that should be made to the City of Thompson and LGD industry like over the next 20 years. Kind of figuring what you've heard right now in this presentation. You can go over there. And I encourage you to grab one of those green sticky dots. You can grab a few of them and place some of the things you feel are the most important to focus on over the next while. And if the things that you are thinking of are not on that list, grab a sticky note there that's on the table, and you can stick that on that in the little box at the bottom corner of that. So that's the first thing we want you to do. And once you're done that, head over to this side of the room, and we've got a number of questions with these maps here. And so we're asking a few questions. The first tables here, we're asking both for the City of Thompson and the larger LGD of Mystery Lake. We're asking what makes this place special to you. And so this helps to know, like, are there important things that should be preserved over the next 20 years that you if you value cross-country skiing trails in a certain area, and you use those, put a note or also a dot on that, and you can just write on the map or on the sticky note. This is really important for us. It makes this place special. We go here often through the winter. So any place like that, there's a few ideas on there too to get you started. So start with that, and you can think a few things. In I think kind of these middle, or in that back table there, where we've zoomed in on Thompson and said, are there areas in the city of Thompson that have issues or need improvement? So if you come and have a bunch of ideas about like, oh, we really need to improve this part of town and make it better, you can write those on the things in that map. And then the last two there are questions of, okay, what are your big ideas? Do you have some big ideas for the future? Once again, make a note, mark them and put them on those maps, and we can fill them up with a bunch of great ideas that we'll take in and think about. And so these are ways, that before you leave, just go around the room and fill these things out, and it'll be a good help for us to start planning and thinking about the vision, the changes over the next 20 years here. The last thing that we have, all right, I see on here, I'm gonna pull it up as we go. We've got a QR code, there's a survey that is now live on the City of Thompson web, or actually it's on a SurveyMonkey account. So we're gonna send out the link as well. And it's gonna be an online survey. If you need a paper copy, we'll have them later on at City Hall.